Look at the thermostat on your wall right now. You woke up warm. You'll go to sleep warm. You have no idea what that number cost. For 300,000 years, your ancestors faced winters that would kill a modern human in hours. Not days, hours. And yet, here you are, which means somewhere back down your family line, thousands of people solved a problem you've never had to think about with nothing but bone, hide, dung, and an unbelievable amount of cleverness. What they did to survive winter will change how you see that glowing number forever. Before we get to what they built, you need to understand what they were up against, because you've never met this kind of cold. The cold you know is an inconvenience. You shiver, you pull your coat tighter, and within a minute or two, you're back inside where the air is soft and warm and waiting for you. Your cold has an exit. Theirs did not. Picture an ice age winter with no walls to run back into. Air so cold, it hurts to breathe. Wind that doesn't just chill you, but strips the heat off your skin faster than your body can make it. And it doesn't stop for weeks. There is no warm room anywhere in the entire world. There is only the fire you keep alive and the dark. And here's the part your body doesn't want to hear. In cold like that, you don't get hours to figure things out. Once your core temperature starts to fall, your thinking goes first. You get clumsy, you get confused. Some people in the final stages of freezing feel a strange rush of warmth and start taking their clothes off. They die half undressed, convinced they were burning up. The cold doesn't just kill your body. It switches off the mind that might have saved it. This is the enemy. Not a chilly morning. A silent, patient thing that waited every single year to erase anyone who got the details wrong. So when you see what these people built, remember, they weren't being clever for fun. Every idea that follows was the difference between waking up and not. Okay, now let's kill the cartoon in your head. When you picture an ancient human in winter, you probably picture a cave. A hairy figure hunched at the mouth of some dark rocky hole, shivering, waiting for spring. It's the image every textbook gave you, and it's almost entirely wrong. Caves were rare. Caves were cold, damp, and often already occupied by things with teeth. Most ancient humans across the frozen north never lived in one. What they did instead was far more clever and far more deliberate. They went underground on purpose. At sites across Ice Age Russia and Eastern Europe, archaeologists keep finding the same thing. Pit houses, dwellings dug straight down into the earth, 6, 7, 8 feet deep, and then roofed over. This wasn't laziness or accident. It was physics. A few feet below the surface, the ground holds a steady temperature all year round, often 20 to 30 degrees warmer than the screaming air above it. The soil is a battery of stored summer heat, and it releases it slowly all winter long. Think about what that means. While the wind above ground was cold enough to kill, the floor of their home was quietly warm, for free, forever. They didn't try to outmuscle the cold with bigger and bigger fires. They just refused to fight it on its own terms. They dropped below the weather and let the planet do the heating. And it wasn't just a hole in the ground. These pit houses were often ringed with heavy bone, weighted down with earth, roofed with hide and turf, and sunk into the most sheltered spot available. Every detail was a decision. Which way does the wind come from? Where does the meltwater run? How deep do we dig before the labor stops being worth it? These were people reading the landscape like a book, choosing a site the way you'd choose where to build a house today. Except a wrong answer didn't cost them money. It cost them the winter. The next time your basement feels strangely cool in August and strangely mild in January, understand that you're feeling the exact same trick. Your ancestors bet their lives on it 30,000 years before you had a word for it. But here's where it goes from clever to genuinely jaw-dropping. On the cold plains of what is now Ukraine, there were no trees to speak of, no timber to build with, no forests to shelter in, just grass, wind, and the biggest animal walking the earth. So the people who lived there did something that sounds like myth. They built their houses out of mammoths. At a site called Mezhirish, archaeologists uncovered the remains of dwellings assembled almost entirely from mammoth bone. Enormous skulls set into the ground as foundation blocks. Jawbones stacked and interlocked into walls in careful herringbone patterns. Long, curving tusks arced overhead to frame a dome. One of these structures used the bones of dozens of individual mammoths and would have taken a staggering amount of labor and planning to raise. Now cover that bone frame in heavy hide, pack the gaps, and light a modest fire inside. When researchers built experimental reconstructions of these shelters and tested them, the results were astonishing. The interiors held temperatures 40 to 50 degrees warmer than the frozen air outside, using only a small managed fire. Sit with that number. That is a level of insulation that many modern Arctic emergency shelters struggle to match. People with no metal, no cement, no machinery, built cold weather housing that performs on par with, or better than, gear we manufacture today with industrial technology. And here's the uncomfortable, almost eerie part, told gently. These homes were built from the same animals that fed them. The mammoth was dinner, and the mammoth was the roof over their heads while they ate it. Nothing was wasted because nothing could be. every part of that giant became a meal, a tool, a fuel, or a wall. You have never had to think that hard about a single resource. This is the part nobody talks about. When you imagine ancient fire, you imagine one thing: a single flickering campfire. Everyone huddled around it, just trying to stay warm. Simple, primitive, a last line of defense against the dark. That is not what fire was. Fire was a system. Inside these winter shelters, archaeologists don't find one hearth, they find several positioned deliberately, each apparently serving a different job. One fire for cooking, another for working hides or tools, another purely for heat. This wasn't people randomly lighting flames wherever. This was a managed household with different stations for different tasks running at the same time, like rooms in a house you can't see the walls of. Then there's the fuel. On the treeless plains, there was no wood to burn, so they burned bone. And they burned dung. And this wasn't desperation, it was engineering. Bone and dried mammoth dung don't behave like firewood. They smolder differently, they release heat differently, they last far longer. Ice Age people learned exactly how to prepare and feed these fuels to get slow, steady, all-night warmth from materials you would walk straight past without a second glance. And the most sophisticated part is the part you'd never think of. Ventilation. A sealed, insulated shelter with a fire inside is a death trap if you get the airflow wrong. Too little air and the smoke and damp build up, the moisture soaks into everything, and the structure itself starts to rot and fail. So they built these homes to breathe, drawing fresh air in and pushing bad air out, keeping the inside dry and the fire alive. They were quietly solving problems in heat management and airflow that engineers still get paid to solve today. You flick a switch and a machine does all of this for you. The heating, the fuel, the airflow, the moisture control, handled silently behind your walls while you scroll your phone. They did it with instinct, memory, and thousands of tiny lessons paid for in mistakes. Every family carried a private library of hard-won knowledge about staying alive in the cold, and none of it was written down. It lived in people, passed from parent to child around the same fires it kept burning. So the shelter is warm, the fire is managed, the wind is locked outside. Now the long winter night begins, and it is long. 16, 17 hours of darkness. What on earth did they do with all that time? Here's the first surprise. They probably didn't sleep the way you do. In 1992, a researcher named Thomas Ware ran a now famous experiment. He took people and, for a month, removed artificial light, giving them 14 hours of darkness every night, the way a real winter would. And their sleep quietly reorganized itself. They stopped sleeping in one long block. Instead, they slept in two phases, a first sleep and a second sleep, with a strange, calm, wakeful stretch in the middle of the night. Not anxious insomnia, a peaceful, meditative window floating between two sleeps. That, it turns out, may be the sleep pattern your body actually wants. The single, unbroken 8-hour block you feel guilty for failing to hit, that might be the historical weird one. Yours is the exception. Theirs was the rule. And what filled the firelit hours before and around that sleep? Talk. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years recording conversations among the Jew/Huansi people, one of the last groups living close to the original human rhythm. During the day, their talk was practical, logistics, who's hunting where, complaints, plans, but at night around the fire, everything changed. Around 80% of nighttime conversation was stories, myths, distant places, adventures, the people who came before, the shape of the world itself. Do you understand what that means for the winter? The campfire was the original classroom, the original cinema, the original church, all in one. And it's very likely that this long confinement, these endless dark nights packed together in a warm shelter, is exactly where some of the greatest early human art was born. The cave paintings, the small carved Venus figurines. Not made in spare summer moments, but in the deep, still, firelit heart of winter, when there was nothing to do but survive, and dream, and create. Now look back at your thermostat, that quiet little number on the wall. It represents a level of warmth your ancestors would have considered close to miraculous. But here's the strange twist. It's not miraculous because they couldn't achieve it. They could. They built shelters as warm as ours out of bone and hide and dung. The miracle isn't the warmth. The miracle is that yours is free. So tonight, when the room gets cold and you reach out and nudge that number up a degree, just pause for half a second. Somewhere behind you stretches an unbroken line of people who kept the fire alive through winters you would not last one night in. You are warm right now because none of them failed.